One time I went on an OkCupid date, and everything was normal until the end. She was a cute, blonde girl that liked some of the things I liked. We seemed to make each other laugh via OkCupid chat, so I asked her if she wanted to meet. She said sure. We met up at the Elephant and Castle in San Francisco. It's a popular bar and has enough room to have private conversations. I was kind of nervous and didn't want to drink because I was on medication, but she called me out, so I ordered what she ordered. A pear cider. We go upstairs and nervously talk. At first it was awkward, but we both seemed to loosen up quickly. She has a darker sense of humor than I expected, bringing up topics like burned bodies discovered on the side of the road and making jokes. I'm into it and play along too. Everything seems completely fine and normal, and I start maybe to even like her, and she touches me playfully, and it just seems completely normal and easy. Then suddenly, without anything weird being said or anything happening, no phone call or emotion or reaction, she gets up and just walks away rapidly. I was so confused by the suddenness, I thought maybe I had missed something she said, and followed her through the crowded bar as she increased her speed. She never looked back at me or anything. She just kept going for the door. I thought maybe she was having a panic attack or something like that, but when we got outside she was completely fine. She kept walking away at top speed when I finally said, "Hey, wait a moment." She turned around with this look on her face like she didn't know who I was and said, "Yes." I was like, oh, that was so sudden. I just wanted to say goodbye. Maybe we can shake hands or something." I didn't really know what to say, and I tried to make a joke thinking about the least intimate greeting. She said, "Why?" as she stuck out her hand and put it in mine awkwardly. Then she turned around and hightailed it out there. I took a minute and looked at her walk away, and I tried retracing my steps of what we said and did, and trying to think of why she reacted like that. I really felt like I must be the shittiest person ever. What I didn't notice while thinking was that there was this huge crowd of people smoking outside the bar. It must have been 50 people just all around the bar, and we had been standing right in the center of them. I didn't notice at first, but after she left they all started cracking jokes about me. Like tons and tons of jokes, and it was like suddenly I could hear them, so I kind of looked around me realizing what was happening until I recognized the jokes were about me. Finally, one very tall black dude smoking a clove shouted loudly, "Ah shit, Romeo, you fucked that shit up. Look how fast that bitch is walking." Everyone just erupted in laughter. I was so double stunned that I just kind of walked away slowly back toward the BART station. As I walked I heard that same voice yell, "Ah shit, did I hurt that guy's feelings? Sorry brother." That's not the worst date I have been on, but it was one that I think of a lot in the shower when I feel depressed. So this happened to my cousin. No, not me, my cousin. And I will tell this story till I die. Her and I lived together at the time. She worked at a tanning salon. She mentions this guy Vaughn that started coming in, and he's really hot and always flirts with her. So I guess 2 weeks after back and forth flirting, Vaughn asks her out on a date. She comes home, gets all prettied up. I wish her luck, tell her to please call me if she decides to stay over, so I know she's okay. She's a few years younger than me, and I have no idea who this guy is. Anyways, she ends up calling me about 5 hours later. Hysterical, bawling her eyes out. Can't understand a word. All I can make out is, "I'm at the hospital, my car is at blah 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 address. Please go get it, then come pick me up." So my boyfriend and I go get her car. We drop it off at our house, then my boyfriend decides to pick up a couple buddies of his along the way, because it sounds like someone needed an ass kicking. We had no idea what was going on. We get to the hospital, and she's outside shivering. A man is standing near her, but not beside her. He looks worried, and she looks like hell. She jumps in the car and screams, "Just drive." Me being mad as fuck, say to the guy, "Are you Vaughn?" He looks like he's going to cry at any second. He says, "Yes, please don't be mad. I brought her here. I had to. She didn't want me to. Please let me explain." My cousin is in absolute hysterics at this point. Punching the back of my seat, "Please, Giolo," I said, "I don't have time to listen to you. She wants to go home. I need to take care of her." We drive home. I keep asking what the fuck happened, please tell me now. Did he hurt you? Do we need to call the cops? Her response is, "No, please. Nothing like that. I'll tell you at home." Not in front of other people, so I left it at that. Dying inside to know. We get home, I tuck her in bed. Give her some tea. Try and calm her down. Every time she tries to start explaining, she buries her face and cries. Finally I get it out of her. After she left our house, she met him at his house. They talked and had a coffee, and he asks what she would like to do. She suggests a movie. He said, okay, let's go to Blockbuster. They go to Blockbuster. This is where it all starts. They pick their movie and head to the cashier. She says she doesn't feel so good and remembers waking up on the floor. Vaughn told her she passed out and hit her head pretty hard on the counter. She said he was begging her to go to the hospital right then and there. She said, no, I'll be fine. Let's just go watch the movie. He agrees. They get back to his place. He keeps asking if she's all right, if she would please change her mind and go to the hospital. She says no over and over. She said she doesn't remember falling asleep, but she guessed that's what happened, because suddenly wakes up urgently needing to shit and vomit. She has no idea the layout of this guy's house, so she scrambles to the floor feeling dizzy again, starts crawling, literally. Asking where the washroom is, he tries picking her up to take her, but she said she couldn't hold back. Throws up all over his floor, all over him. Shits in her pants. She starts crying. She said he was so concerned. He didn't even care, he just took her to the bathroom to finish. While they make it to the bathroom, she said she pulls her pants down before she makes it to the toilet, and shits like a parrot all over the walls. He gently closes the door, and says, pass me your clothes, and he has something for her to wear. She agrees and does so. She said she stopped vomiting and shitting, and finally agreed to go to the hospital. He takes her, and then shortly after I got that phone call. While she's telling me this, I am laughing so hard, crying, rubbing her head, and wondering if this is all a joke. No, because they ended up getting married, and we bring this up at least once a year. I was at a good-sized house party in college, and the host introduced me to his lab mate shortly after I got there. We got to talking while things were warming up. No one was tanked yet, and people were still arriving. Eventually the lab mate asked me for my number. He was okay looking, seemed a little dull but harmless, and I agreed. We barely knew each other, but why not? It's college. You meet people and have a series of terrible and meaningless relationships. He disappeared shortly after. I didn't think much of it because the house was decent sized and figured he wandered off. The party ended around 3, when we were out of booze. The next morning around 8:30 a.m., I got a call. Barely conscious, maybe still a bit drunk, I answered like an idiot. It was him. He asked me out for a nice steak dinner and church that evening. To get him off of the phone as quickly as possible, so I could go back to sleep, I agreed to whatever he was asking without really understanding the question, and awoke around noon with no real memory of the conversation. He called me a few hours later asking me for my address, so he could pick me up. Memories came flooding back. I gave it to him, hastily showered, put on makeup and a nice outfit, regretting agreeing to this but looking forward to the steak, and went down to my apartment's garage to meet him. He was dressed short of schlubby, but I figured that's a grad student for you. I didn't think a nice place would really turn us away. As he drove, he proceeded to flip through dozens of songs, mostly Elvis, never letting one finish, sometimes starting from the beginning of the same song several times in a row. I heard the first minute of You Ain't Nothing But a Hound Dog more time than I care to admit that night. He then revealed to me he didn't like music and everything on his iPod was from his dad borrowing it for a road trip. It was a 64 gigabytes, big for the time, and expensive, with around 100 songs on it. Utterly bizarre and distracting. It also turned out he didn't really like anything, couldn't name a book he'd read since high school, or even one he enjoyed, didn't watch TV but was lurking while his roommates were watching Fawlty Towers, but didn't understand the humor, didn't have a favorite movie. His reply was, I like everything, when I asked and said he liked Titanic, didn't play video games. Didn't know Harry Potter was a book series before a movie. Favorite food was Taco Bell. What had I gotten into? We were heading to a nice part of town, past a couple of nice restaurants, and I eagerly ask him where we're going to end up. He replies with a vague, oh, you'll see. To keep the conversation going, I asked where he disappeared to last night. He said he left because his bedtime is at 10:30 p.m. sharp every night. I asked if that's why he'd called me so early. He seemed surprised, and thought he'd given me time for sleeping in. Holy shit. My apprehension grew. He then turned suddenly into a Denny's parking lot. We go in. Shit. I'm way overdressed. We're seated. I figured I was promised steak. I'm getting one even if it's nastiest, most gristly slab of beef in the city. He turns to me and eagerly asks if I'm okay with splitting. I was tempted to buy us each our own damn steak, but to be polite and to not embarrass him I agreed, resolving to eat a proper dinner at home. The steak came, we split. I tried to not feel the judgmental eyes of the staff on me, and proceeded to church. It was a Saturday night young adult service with contemporary music, and was supposed to be some sort of place for the non-secular devout to hang out on Saturday nights instead of sex, drugs, and rock and roll, I guess. Whatever the heathens do. Free coffee and stale donuts. During the singing, large group of people would jump up onto the pews and furiously bounce along to the music, belting out the lyrics. He was smiling, clapping his hands along to the music, and interjected with him waving his arms in the air. I was dying a little and couldn't wait to leave. They had a, thankfully, short service on keeping yourself pure, and my horror grew to the point I think I could power a small city with it. He was nodding along vigorously with the pastor, with the occasional aha and other grunts of agreement. Did he bring me here to convert me from my sinful ways? Damn. The evening could have gone so much worse, but thankfully he didn't ask me what I thought of the service, or maybe he was astute enough to detect my ire. He took me home without incident. My roommates piled on me asking how it was, and well, I told them the same thing I'm telling here. I'm walking down the street, just finishing a conversation on my old-ass, craptastic flip phone. Just as I'm hanging up, wham, I know into someone and drop my phone. I apologize, grab my phone, and head back to work. 10 minutes later I get a phone call. Hey, I think we switched phones by accident. Turns out the girl I bumped into had the same phone as me. Anyways, we planned to meet at a local coffee place after work that day to trade back. I walk up and see this very cute ginger wearing a suit dress. We chat for a bit. Turns out she works at a bank, likes what I like, and is totally up for getting dinner this weekend. Great. Saturday evening rolls around, and I swing by her place to pick her up. Out her door walks a girl who looks remarkably like said date, only instead of professional office clothes. She is wearing 4-inch platform hoe boots, fishnet stockings, some sort of corset-like top, and in spiky hair. Now normally I don't really care about a person's style, but I was a bit taken aback. Who cares, I think, and jump out to open the door. Cue witty banter. Everything is going great. She's laughing at my jokes, and her humor seems to match mine perfectly. She asks what the plan is for the night, and I tell her I'm going to take her to my absolute favorite high-quality dining establishment and get her a Big Mac. Hell, if she plays her cards right, I might even supersize it. She runs with the joke, and even one-ups me. My spirits are high. She might have wild fashion, but this chick is cool. We arrive at this nice pub in town, and I turn off the car. What about McDonald's? Legit confused look on her face. I laugh, and upon seeing her face stop in confusion. We head inside and order dinner. I have a scotch and she orders the biggest boot. This restaurant has glass boots, of Bud Light I've ever seen. The waiter comes over and takes our order. As he's leaving, my date whispers rather loudly, I can't believe they let his people in such a classy place. We should probably check our food for spit before we eat it. Our waiter is black and has ears, so I am beginning to panic. She continues her whispered commentary on the supremacy of whites, all the while putting away an obscene, but impressive, quantity of beer. Dinner arrives, and she makes a point of checking her plate for saliva. Waiter and I make eye contact, and I like to think that he understood that I agreed with him that this girl was nuts. So 3 more boots of beer later, she excuses herself for a bathroom break while I take care of the check. I apologize profusely to the waiter for my date's conduct. Dude is a true gentleman. Don't worry about it, man. There are all sorts of people in this world. My date returns and we head out. In MY car, she pulls out a cigarette and lights up. Doesn't even bother putting the window down. We should go shooting out at my dad's farm. What's your favorite fun? I vaguely excuse myself from such activities and point out that it is rather later and time to go home. I drop her off at her house and she says, this was great, except for that F waiter. We should totally go get that Big Mac next time. See you soon. I flee. First date with my ex. He picked me up at home. We drive 1 block to his friend's house where he walked straight to the backyard and started yelling, Tony. No answer. He gets mad. We leave. He never told me what our date would consist of, so as we're driving, I'm looking around and had no idea where we were going. He finally pulls up to the bowling alley in our town. He said he took the back way because he wanted to surprise me. I honk he just got lost. Game 1 commences. I win. He says he let me win because he wanted to be nice. Game 2 I win. Game 3 rolls around, and he's mad because I'm kicking his ass. He was trying his damnedest to beat me. It was quite funny as he was sweating and cursing up a storm with every gutter ball. I asked him if he wanted bumpers as a joke. He just ignored me and sat down across from. I win game 3. Then I mentioned to him that I used to be on a bowling league and am very kick-ass. We leave after game 3. We go get Chinese food. We eat, have a conversation. Typical date stuff. He goes up to the counter to ask for a refill on his drink. Cashier asks for the 15 cents refill charge as stated on posted sign on the cash register. He flips out and walks away and tells me we're leaving. I hadn't even finished my food. He drives me back to his friend's house and goes back to the back and continues to yell, "Tony." He gets no answer again. He then tell me they were playing video games and he wanted to finish the game earlier, but since Tony wasn't there, he tried again after our date. With nothing left to do, he drives me the 1 block back home. Needless to say, we dated for a year and a half after that. Things ended after a bad Valentine's Day date. Edit, Tony, I already knew him. My ex, Tony, and I were all on yearbook staff together. Valentine's Day date for those asking. It's long. I got off of an 8-hour shift at work. I was a waitress and on my feet all day. On the way home, he texted me to hurry up and get ready. I just wanted to relax a bit, shower and rest my feet. After I told him I would be ready around 9, he said I needed to be ready earlier. There was never any mention of any reservations to me, so I didn't know why he needed me to be ready before 9. Anyway, he picked me up and we started driving, and it was completely silent. I didn't say anything until we parked in front of BJ's. It was crowded and I said, "Looks busy, we're not going to get a table." He replied, "I had a reservation but you weren't ready on time." A fight started because he was mad that we didn't make it to our reservation. I was mad because I was never told of a reservation and I would more than likely be paying for dinner because I was the only one who had a job. His parents never gave him money because they didn't like me. At one point he started punching his steering wheel and I noped the fuck out of his car and ran to a closed-down furniture store. I called a co-worker, and when my ex ran after me, I told him to stay away from me and that he would never see me again. My co-worker left his date and came to pick me up. The next day I went to pick up my shit and from the ex's house. Okay, I saw him once more, but it was to pick up my shit. I gave him back his promise ring, and he actually said, "Hopefully the next girl will appreciate it more." I told him it wasn't smart to give that ring to the next girl. He texted me later while I was at work, and he said, "Give me some time, and then we can be friends." I never texted him back, and haven't spoken to him since. Yes, the coworker had feeling for me, and yes, we eventually began dating. He wasn't a rebound. We're still together 5 years later, and getting married next year. So what if I don't know what needless means? Seemed right at the time I was typing this. Okay, so this is really long, so the TLDR is I went on a date with a highly functional special needs woman. This is hands down the worst date, not only that I've had, but any of my friends have even heard about. When it got bad, that was only the prequel to what was to come. 2003, I'm at home and get a random phone call. I didn't own a cell, let's call her Melissa, is on the other end. She says she got my number from a mutual friend who thought that I would like her. Okay, this is an odd phone call, but I'm really single, and a prospect of going on a date sounded delightful. We talk for more than an hour. She is sprinkling hints as to what she looks like. She also says she has seen pictures of me and thinks I'm cute. Bonus. She mentions her bra size more than once. Okay, sweet, I like a bigger chested girl, I'm thinking. We line up a date for the next Saturday. It was Thursday. I live in town and she lives in a suburb that requires her to catch a train and then a bus, roughly a 2-hour ride to see me. I have no idea what she looks like, except that she has big boobs and brown hair. I'm standing in the spot where we decided to meet, and I'm seeing a girl kind of stumbling down the street. She's wearing those baggy type jeans that goth kids wear, really baggy and frayed at the cuffs. Not my style at all. Also, she's got way too much makeup on. It's her, it's Melissa, my date. The reason she was stumbling is because she got a bit nervous at the idea of a blind date, so she picked up a Mickey for the train ride into town, then another for the bus ride, and I'm meeting 2 Mickeys deep and clearly drunk. The second she sees me, her haze-off drunk rises a notch to excitement, and she drapes herself across me in a sloppy hug with a butt grab added at the end. I'm confused and scared and nervous, and a bit frustrated all at once. I had planned to take her to play pool at an upscale place downtown that's kind of trendy. I mention it, and she's all for it as long as they serve alcohol. I'm okay. At the pool hall, the waitress gets us a table and asks us if we would like a drink. 4 shots of tequila and a pint of beer. She says, "Wow, okay, tequila? I'm not usually a fan, but okay." I say, "Oh, did you want some tequila too?" she replies. They were all for her. Keep in mind it was probably around 3 in the afternoon. The shits come, and one after another without a pause goes down Melissa's throat. 1 shot, 2 shot, 3 shot, 4, and then downs the beer. Upon finishing the beer, she looks right into my eyes and wipes the foam from her lips with the back of her hand. My mind pictured what a drunk rapist looks like moments before committing a rape. She saunters over to me while I trying to line up a shot and not notice how drunk she's getting. She leans over me while I'm bent over and says, "You can take me. We can go to the bathroom right now if you want." I miss my shot partially due to the hand creeping its way to my crotch. I kind of laugh her off and say maybe we should wait until we finish the game. She lets out this impatient sigh and grabs my cue to make her shot. She isn't really lining it up, and then she takes a hit. It barely even grazed the cue ball. In frustration, Melissa throws the pool cue across the pool table, whereupon hitting the carpet snags it and creates a massive tear across the table. This is hilarious to her, and she starts laughing like an idiot hyena. I'm less than amused. I say I need to take a leak and head to the bathroom. I'm keeping an eye on me back as I do in the case she's tailing me. In the bathroom, I lock myself into a stall and put my face in my hands. How did I get here? Who is the woman, and why did I agree to this? How can I get out this? Where is my God, and why has he forsaken me? JK, I'm not religious. While I'm in the bathroom contemplating my poor life decisions, I'm hearing a commotion outside. Some sort of shouting and a glass breaking. I compose myself as best I can and leave my sanctuary. Melissa and the bartender are face to face yelling at each other. The bartender and also a friend is being rational and asking her not to pull at the tear created by her pool cue lancing. Apparently she thought THR hilarity would continue if she ripped more carpet off the table, while the waitress and bartender thought better. Melissa sees me and starts explaining how much these two are idiots. I try calming her and tell her maybe we should hit up another place anyway. She complies, thank God. I'm an opportunist, so I try to make the best of this situation. I'm mentally crossing off the date stuff I can do with this girl in her inebriated state, and come to conclusion it would be best to just get drunk and pass the time until her scheduled bus leaves. She's all for it, surprise, surprise. I grab a case of beer, and being a sunny day, I suggest a beach not far from the train station. I've stated more than once now that she should be on her way when the bus gets here. I didn't want her to have to be stranded in town if she did, I say. She's reluctantly agrees. We pass the next few hours drinking on the beach, and her trying her best to paw at my crotch. By about 6:30 or so I'm fairly buzzed and not far from ending this odd scenario. It's about time to head to the bus station. She's moving at half speed now, and hinting that she doesn't want to leave yet. I'm not paying attention, but instead taking her by elbow and inching toward her bus. She doesn't have any more money. I pay for the ticket. The bus driver takes her ticket, but she doesn't get on. Instead, she looks over her shoulder at me and then proceeds to empty her stomach right on the first step of the bus. The bus driver pushes her back, curses her out, closes the door, and peels off. Oh God, no. Wiping her mouth of leftover vomit, she gives me a faint smile and says, "Well, looks like we can hang out a little longer." I'm not amused, I'm not trying to hide it either. I'm not smiling, I'm not being polite, I'm a totem of disappointment. I'm walking away from the train station with her in tow. She explains that she has nowhere to go, and it really isn't a big deal if she just goes home with me. And besides, we can have some fun while we're at it. No. I let the steam of anger simmer down a bit and think logically, mistake. She really doesn't have anywhere to go, and it would be a dick move to just leave her to her own devices. Reluctantly, I tell her she crash at my place, but it's going to be on my couch. She's all for it. I live with my cousin at the time, and he's home. He sees this atrocity come in behind me and runs to his bedroom, stifling the laughs along the way. Fuck you, cuz. We watch a bit of TV while finishing the last of the beer in my fridge. I tell her it's getting late and I'm gonna call it a night. I grab some extra blankets and pillows for her. She takes them quietly and thanks me. It's the middle of the night. I'm awakened by a sensation in being crushed. Melissa is on top of me. On top, my blankets fully clothed and our faces are inches apart. I couldn't sleep, is all she says. I tell her to get off of me and that she's hurting me. She gets up. She says she didn't want to sleep in my living room and asks if she can sleep in here with me. Wordless, I get up, grab the blankets and pillow from the living room and make a bed next to mine. She watches me do this, and when I finish, instead saying anything, I point to the bed AMD, climb back into my own. Once more that night, she attempted to get on top of me. Also, she never took her shoes off. The heavens smile upon me by blessing me with daybreak. I wake her up and repeat the process of taking her to the bus station. This time the formalities are gone. There's your bus, don't puke this time. No, I didn't have a good time, but goodbye anyway. On returning home, I pull out my black book and look up our mutual friend, and proceed to rag her out for putting me through such an ordeal. My friend is perplexed and has no idea who Melissa is. I describe her, and there's a moment of silence. She says she remembers now, it makes sense, she says. My friend had her friend from out of town come to visit, but she had brought along her cousin, who was high-functioning, but a special needs student. Her mother was in the process having her signed over to a group home here in town. When Melissa visited my friend, she apparently went through her things and found a photo of me with her with my phone number on the back and took it. I went on a date with a mentally disabled woman. Story 7. So, I get an itch for some delicious sashimi from my favorite restaurant in town, and I drive on over. Table for one, please. The cute hostess seats me and kind of gives me the eye. I brush it off and pay no mind. I start answering some work emails on my phone as my meal arrives, and I continue to reply to these shits and eat my food in peace. Hello, can I sit with you? I'm on break. It's the cute hostess. I put my phone down and tell her she's more than welcome. We enjoy some small talk, and she asks me to hang out. I figured I'd go for it since she's kinda cute, but a little invasive. Whatever. So that night, it's 10 p.m., and she calls me and asks me to go out with her and her friends. I say no, but she insists and she offers to pick me up. My truck was in the shop, so I figured that was pretty nice of her. Little did I know she was doing it to give me no way out of her crazy trap. We hit up this huge dance club, which is something I never do because it's way out of my comfort range. She introduces me to like 10 of her friends. All of them giggle and smile, and I hear one say, "He looks like he could be the one." What the fuck? Do I look like Keanu? Whatever. I order a beer and ask her if she wants a drink. She's like, "Oh, I'll get my own," and orders 5 shots of Sky vodka and drinks them all in succession. So here I am, with this girl whose friends think I'm going to marry, and she's fucking shit-can hammered. Great. Hey, this place is a little intense for me. We should split. She's like, "I'll BRB," and comes back with 2 shots of Jameson. I take them because fuck it. I'm stuck now, and if something happens I'd like to use. I was drunk as an excuse. Last call comes around, and we're walking out the door. She insists on driving, and it's like a 5-minute ride back to our neighborhood. So I figure I'd like to live dangerously for one evening and hop in the passenger side. I'm drunk enough, and I want the night to be over. Fuck it. She takes me to her fucking parents' house instead of her apartment. It's 20 minutes from my house. No chance in walking home now. Sad face. We walk in and she's like, "Do you want some wine?" "I want some wine." I'm gonna get us some wine from the wine cellar. Little did I know, her parents own the restaurant in which this tale began. She comes back up from downstairs with this bottle of wine. God knows what kind it was. I'm not sure if it was $6 or $600. I didn't care anymore. I can't find a corkscrew. And she hammers the glass on the edge of the countertop and makes a smooth break. I was pretty impressed, but still kind of worried about my fate. Oh shit! I gotta let my dogs out. She opens the cages and lets these dogs just shit on the floor and says to me, "Pretend like you didn't see that. Let's go up to my room. I want to show you something. Do you want some Coke?" "No thanks, but I'll come with you." At this point, I was ready to bang her or hang myself, as there was no way out of this predicament. We head upstairs and she breaks out a mirror and cuts up a few lines. "I want to read you something." She starts reading me journal entries and the shittiest poetry I've ever heard as she does lines and drinks wine. These are journal entries from when I was in rehab. I used to do a lot of coke. I went through a really rough time with my ex-husband when we lived in Italy. I didn't know it, but he was gay. I tried everything I could to make him straight again, or even be attracted to me more. I even let him fuck me in the ass. Something along those lines. So here I am, in this chick's parents' house at 5 in the morning, drunk and listening to her terrify me with her life story the first time we met. She puts her journal, the cocaine, and the glass of wine. It was more of a cup like you would use for your morning glass of milk or whatever. Down and asks me if she can try something. Whatever, go ahead. I'm frustrated, drunk, tired, annoyed, and this girl won't shut the hell up. She climbs on top of me and starts gyrating on my man parts and playing with herself. I'm thinking, this is a really unorthodox way of trying to get someone to fuck you, but whatever. So I go with it. Like a minute later, she gets off of me and grabs my dick and says, You're hard. I thought I was kind of scaring you, but I see that I'm turning you on. But I don't want to have sex with you. It's our first date. I tell her I'm tired, and I have underscore 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 to do the next day. I just want to sleep. So I make a weird barrier of blankets between us and pass out. The next day she drives me home and asks if I would like to hang out again. Sure. I said as sarcastically as possible, thinking me might get the hint, and I just the door and walk to my apartment. That night she calls me again and asks me if I want to go see Lady Gaga. I've always wanted to see a Lady Gaga show, but I had to bail for the sake of my own sanity. Row 4. RIP. Story 8. I recently had a date that I thought was the best of my life end up being the worst of my life. Met a girl on OkCupid. We start talking on a Sunday. We chat a bit, exchanging messages on the site. We're both very nerdy and love games. She plays MMOs and GMs D&D and does Friday Night Magic. Fucking perfect. And she doesn't look too bad. In fact, she's probably the most attractive girl that has ever talked to me on that site. She gives me her phone number, and we text for an hour about more nerdy shit. Then she informs me that her phone is dying, and she doesn't have her charger, and that her phone plan runs out that night. So she gives me her Facebook and says she can get Wi-Fi on her phone still, and talk to me there. We spend about 7 hours chatting on Facebook until 4 a.m. Since it was Sunday, I took about an hour break to watch True Blood. She apparently likes True Blood, says she's Sookie IRL. Why are you Sookie? Because I'm sort of telepathic and I can read people and feel their emotions and thoughts. Ahu, red flag 1. She asks if she can come over and watch True Blood with me. My roommates, friends, and I had just spent the entire weekend having a LAN party. My 2 roommates and I were still set up in the living room for the LAN, and none of us had felt like being productive members of society that day, so none of us had showered. I tell her this thinking she probably would not want to hang with a bunch of smelly dudes. I have an acquired taste for nerd funk. In fact, I cannot take a shower, so I'll fit in with y'all. Red flag 2. I tell her I'm not really comfortable with that. I mean, we had just started talking that day and never met, so I go watch the show, then we chat more for the rest of the night. In our chats, she seemed really excited and a bit obsessed about the fact that if she came over to hang out with me and my roommates, she was going to make them jealous of me. Red flag 3. When I come over all tits and ass and covered in tattoos and 110 pounds size 0 and all suicide girled out, they're going to get so jealous it will be fun. My roommates and I homebrew beer and mead, and we drink a lot of craft beer. We're beer snobs. I ask if she drinks, and she says that she used to, but doesn't anymore. She only drinks at home, never with a group of males, and only when she can watch her beer and never take her eyes off it after the factory seal has been broken. Then she says she thinks she can talk to her therapist, red flag 4, and be able to drink if she hangs out with me because it sounds like fun to her. At this point, she also makes some comment about having PTSD. Red flag 5. I got the impression that she had been raped in the past from someone spiking her drink, but I never asked her about it and moved on. Doesn't matter to me if that did happen to her or not. It's not something I'd ever even think of doing, and I'll never treat a gal like she's damaged goods or something because of her past. She then makes a comment about drinking homebrew, making her nervous. That's fine, you don't have to drink. My friends and I have abstained from alcohol in the past when having someone over who has serious problems with it. Then out of nowhere she accuses me of being an angry, alcoholic drunk who might hit her. Since her ex-husband started out 2 beers a night and then beat her, and her alcoholic mother abused her. Red flags 6, 7, and 8. Somehow during our conversation about her wanting to make my roommates and friends jealous about her, she makes the comment, "I wreck guys, I've done porn." Red flag 9. Proceeds to tell me all about how she models for some like Suicide Girls website. She did 3 scenes for Naughty America that were never released because I had a good lawyer and they broke contract, so I had them all taken down so no one has ever seen them. Oh, and I fucking love anal. Well, that's nice, but that's not something you say to someone the first time you're chatting with them and haven't even met with yet. Red flag 10. At this point I was halfway convinced this person was a troll and couldn't be real. The next day she chats with me on Facebook more throughout the day while I'm at the office for work. She starts talking to me about drugs. She kind of hinted that she had tried a lot of things. Then tells me that I never do any of the hard stuff, just weed and shrooms for me. Red flag 11. I share my opinion on drugs, mainly that I don't do them ever, but that I don't have that much of a problem with people who do, and many of my friends have tried things in the past. I've even been a trip sitter on occasion. She thinks that hanging out with those kinds of people is really dumb, and she thinks less of me for that. But it's perfectly fine that she's tried heroin, meth, cocaine, acid, and regularly does shrooms and smokes weed. Red flag 12. She tells me that she has a list of things the next guy she dates must have or do, which includes smoke weed every day. She claims she will peer pressure me into it with research studies that only she has access to. Red flag 13. We argue a bit about why she thinks I need to do drugs, why it's okay for her to have tried things but not my friends, and she ends up going into some freak-out mode where she claims she's having terrible anxiety, and I need to stop talking to her right now. Red flag 14. A few hours later she starts talking to me again, says that the things we were talking about were triggering her PTSD and making her anxious, but she's cool now and wants to chat more. Informs me that she really likes me, and that up until our disagreement on illicit substances, and the way that her anxiety attack changed my impression of you, and the way I think of you, that she would have let me wear her like a hat. Red flag 15. We continue to chat. She seems to have gotten over whatever was going on with her, and says she doesn't want to sound clingy, but she just has to see me right now / that day. She wants to bring a late lunch to my work at around 4 p.m. Hell no. Red flag 16. Eventually I agreed to do something with her and meet her that night. I was really wanting to go see Guardians of the Galaxy, so I asked if she wanted to go see that. She did, so I bought tickets for a 9:30 p.m. showtime. She wants to meet me at 7 p.m., so I can get to know you. We won't be talking and learning about each other during the movie. She wants me to meet her at 7 sharp at the mall, in a nerdy / geeky toy shop kind of place. I get there, am completely surprised that she looks just like her pics. She's a little nerdy pixie dream girl with a lot of tattoos. She was talking with the only employee at the store when I walked in, turns her back on him mid-sentence to greet me, and starts walking around the store looking at stuff with me. She complains that the guy working there had been hitting on her, and she was so glad I showed up on time. Apparently people hit on her all the time in public. Red flag 17. We look at everything in the store. She's possibly even more nerdy than I am, and a total fangirl for everything. She also asks repeatedly if I will buy little things for her in the shop. Red flag 18. We start walking around the mall. Almost instantly she starts putting her arm around mine, leaning on me, hanging on my shoulder, holding my hand. This was a bit strange to me since we'd just met, but whatever. She's cute and she's affectionate, and normally gals don't treat me like that. We go to a bunch of girly / hippie type of stores and popular places. She's constantly asking if I will buy this so adorable / so cute / awesome thing that she wants in every store. Red flag number 19. In one store she strikes up a conversation with the gal working behind the cash register and ends up exchanging numbers with her because she's new to the area and wanting to meet new friends. During this exchange, she calls me her boyfriend and hugs me. Weird. Red flag 20. In one store, one of the girls working there walks by and asks if we need any help. We tell her we're fine and just looking, then we immediately leave. Once we're out of the store, she tells me she almost decked that employee because when she came up to ask if we needed help, the girl had given us a look. It was like she felt sorry for me and was saying, "Sorry honey, I wish you didn't have to be with that guy." WTF? I would have hit her, but I don't need another assault charge. Red flag 21. We still have a good hour and a half until the movie starts, so she suggests we get in her car and drive to her favorite spot. Her car is filthy and covered in trash on the inside. It was honestly as if someone had been living in the car. Red flag 22. We drive to a nearby lake. On the way there she points out a neighborhood of houses and says, "That's where I live." Before we had met up that night, I had asked what part of town she lived in to figure out which theater we should go to, ask if she wanted me to pick her up or meet her there, etc. She had told me she lived in an apartment complex on the opposite side of the lake, from where she pointed out the houses she lived in. Red flag 23. Her spot at the lake was a small park. We sat on a bench, held hands, and talked for a long time. While there she tells me about how she was the innocent, designated driver, techie girl who didn't do anything at parties and was bilingual. Somehow that made her a prime candidate for some guy to woo in order to recruit her to do tech work for the MS-13 gang. She showed me a small infinity symbol tattoo on her foot and claimed it was a MS-13 property mark. She claimed she had not even known what she was doing for 4 years before she got out of that life. Red flag 24. Story 9. I joined website for dating to try and get more dates. That was my only intent. I've been working too much for 2 years at my new job. I just wanted to have more fun. I got an email and set up a date with this girl. It's my 5th date from the site. It's been fun. But this one girl was like one of those love at first sight moments when we met at a restaurant. I saw HH, and she was perfect. I tried to play it cool, but I felt like I could just cut ties with all the girls I've dated and just commit to her. Physically, she was everything I could ever ask for, and exactly my type. Her personality seemed about a 10 out of 10. About 30 minutes into sitting down, we didn't even order cause we were just talking. The chemistry was as good as it was with my first love when I was 13. It was perfect, sparks were flying. I thought I was done and ready to commit here. But then she tells me to forget about ordering food. Let's go somewhere else, and she has this idea. She won't say much, and I like surprises, so I didn't ask much. We jumped in my car and drove to this restaurant about 20 minutes away, kind of out of town. It was halfway up a mountain near a ski resort. I'm familiar with the area, so no big deal. We walk in and her family is celebrating her aunt's birthday. There was only family and a lot of it, about 40 people. She introduces me, and everybody was happy to meet me and real nice. Everybody also knew that she was out on a first date. They were asking her stuff like, "Is this the guy? Is this your date? Is this the one?" All of a sudden I wasn't so cool and relaxed. I felt heavy pressure to be on my best behavior. It was high pressure to the 3rd degree. But everybody was nice, so that helped. We sat down and I started being questioned by her older sister, her aunt, and another lady that I forget her relation to my date. The mom started kind of defending me and telling them to back off and let me eat. But the interrogating continued. After I don't know how long, they turned to my date and jokingly said, "We approve." Then I was able to kind of get my bearings about me for a minute. I was totally off balance all night, just tense. I was afraid the back of my shirt would get that a big wet spot because I felt sweat on my back. So the sister brings her cute little girl and lets me hold her, and she and my date started taking pictures of me holding her, and somebody else's baby boy as well. I started to feel like the tone of it all was that we were a couple. I kind of felt like I was married to her, and these nice people were my in-laws. After a couple of hours, probably closer to 3 hours, everybody was kind of tiring out and everything began to wind down. Keep in mind her car is still at the other restaurant down the hill. Then her dad suddenly asks me jokingly what my intentions are with his daughter, though I can't remember how he phrased the question. Everybody looked at the table, looked at me, which is about half the people there. I guess I was exhausted from all the questioning. I was questioned by multiple people multiple times, and the pressure of it all because I kind of lost it. He asked the question, I looked across the table at her, and she told her dad to stop it. Her dad smiles and jokingly says that he'd really like to hear my response, and her uncle, I think, also said he'd like to know jokingly. I looked at my date and said, "Can I talk to you alone for a minute?" To which her dad laughs loudly and then says, "I made him nervous." So everybody is laughing now, and I guess it was a big joke. Then I said to my date, "Hey, can I talk to you alone for a minute?" I stood up in place, it was one of those long bench seats, and I couldn't push it back cause other people were sitting on it. Then her sister, I think, says, "Oh, there are no secrets in this family. Speak your mind." People then laugh again, and everybody starts making jokes about not having secrets. And this man who married into the family somehow tells me that he remembers being in my place, and he says, "Let me give you some advice. The best thing to do right now is speak your mind and be honest." Then others join in and echo his sentiment, all jokingly, I think. So I looked at my date, and she says something like, "You can tell me anything here, we're all family." She also, I think, was joking, but I had started to lose my ability to tell when people were joking and when they were serious. So the dad says, "Wait, I haven't gotten an answer to my question." So finally I speak directly to the dad and say, "I'd like to discuss that with her first." But I regretfully laughed as I said it. So her dad says, "I asked you first, I want to know." I turn to my date and she says something like, "Go ahead, you can tell me. I'm a big girl, I can handle it." So I said okay, and sat down, then took a couple of breaths while her dad kind of quieted everybody down. I started with, "I think I made a huge mistake." It all spiraled down from there. I said harsh things like that I felt like I was having a bad dream where I was suddenly married. I questioned her intentions in bringing me there. I said stuff like, "What were you thinking? Yes, I liked you, but I just met you, and right now I know your aunt." I pointed at her sitting next to me. "Better than I know you." I think she was humiliated, but I couldn't stop. The more I spoke, the more bad stuff came out. Total fucking tailspin. I said I want to find someone special, but I don't want to skip the first 29 dates and skip to date 30, which is what I'd done that night. Then people started interrupting and chiming in and suggesting that she and I slow down and have a real first date. I wasn't having it. I was out of control. I said, "No, it's too late for that. I feel robbed here. I wanted to meet this girl, get to know her, date her, and maybe fall for her. But now it's like we're engaged and her whole family is here, and there are all these expectations. We skipped the getting to know each other and dating part, so I feel robbed." Then I said yet another thing I regret. I said it's a huge red flag, with an emphatic gesture, that I asked for a minute alone with you to talk, and this is what I got instead. I added something like, "You're all great and a great family, but the lack of certain boundaries is a huge red flag for me. I would never let my relationship become family business." My date interrupts me at this point and says, "Okay, so let's talk in private. Let's go outside and talk. I'm sorry I didn't give you that minute. Let's go outside and talk privately. I'll give you all night." She was visibly shaken, and I could tell tears were inevitable. I stood up again, and realizing that I had insulted all of them, I just quietly walked out. I felt really bad cause they were all nice, and had nothing but the best intentions for me. They love her, and they were literally telling me that I was good enough, which should have been a compliment, but I somehow took it the wrong way and spat in their face. I didn't even drink. Alright, Reddit, let's talk about Lily. Lily was one of my half a dozen or so OkCupid hookups this year. Now, I'll preface by saying that I don't take OkCupid very seriously anymore at all. I made a second account while I was recovering from knee surgery, and have used it on and off ever since, depending upon how bored I am. One night, I get a few profile views and an unexpected message, Lily. She lived about an hour away, and we got to talking about nothing in particular. She was trying to impress me with decent grammar. I type pretty well for a guy on OkCupid, apparently, and I was fairly bored with her personality. We weren't a high match percentage to begin with, and she just seemed to be throwing herself at me too easily. These apps and websites have put a lot of women on such a pedestal that when they make it too easy, it's kind of a red flag. We exchanged actual numbers, although I'm not exactly sure why I bothered. I guess I was feeling particularly desperate. At any rate, 5 minutes into texting, she just starts unloading naked pictures at me. They were obviously previously saved on her phone, and I was not attracted to her at all. She had the body of a woman who looked twice her age and not well taken care of at all. She was 25. The conversation faded out, and we only spoke once or twice in the coming weeks, and not for very long. At one point, she even told me she wasn't interested because she didn't like men in uniform, and to stop talking to her. I did, but she messaged me again anyway. Then, my friends, it happens. I am laying in bed around 2 o'clock in the morning, and my phone buzzes. I sleepily roll over and check the message. "Hey, what are you doing?" We exchange early morning pleasantries where I explain that I'm sleeping regardless of her being bored. As it were, Lily was a stripper, and that was likely her stage name. I was just now learning these facts. She was asking if she could drive the hour to my house and sleep with me. I was hesitant at first, but in a moment of weakness I agreed to let it happen. She shows up nearly 3 hours later in a pair of stripper heels and a very unattractive dress that smelled of broken dreams and body odor. She explains that she got pulled over on her way to my house, and proceeds to explain that the police continually harass her for no reason. She was also a good 3 inches taller than she had indicated, too. I was already not feeling this entire encounter when she strolled into my house and demanded I give her a beer. She starts dumping a Bud Light down her throat and essentially says, "Let's get to it." We go upstairs where she lays on my bed and begins criticizing me for just assuming we were going to hook up. "Wait, what the fuck?" She mocks my choice of interior decorations and scoffs at my scanner when it went off for a traffic stop, noting about her disdain for local law enforcement once more. She then tells me about how she failed out of USMC boot camp, has a child and a baby daddy, sugar daddy, lives off of her mentally ill father, and works as a stripper for fun. I take a chance to shut her up, lean in, and I kiss her. She sets the beer down and seems to enjoy this awkward yet alright kiss. This begins the single worst makeout session of my entire life. I didn't think it was humanely possible to be such a horrible kisser, but by God, it certainly is. She is literally sucking on my mouth like some sort of suction cup and pulling on my hair. She undoes my trousers, and I thank the heavens above I'll at least get something out of this horrible experience. Yeah, wrong. Although she does go down on me, her fellatio is just as bad as her kissing. She is ramming my poor junk into the back of her throat and grinding her teeth around my shaft. I am squirming and begging her to stop, pretty sure she was strangely into that. After several painful minutes, she slips off her underwear and says, "My turn, bitch." I can't make this stuff up. Swallowing, I think to myself, Hollywood Jones, old boy, you've come this far. You may as well ride the train until the end of the line. I go down on this girl, and it is awful. It is awful because she smells and has the single most abnormal clitoris I have ever dealt with. It reminded me of Silly Putty. I don't know how, but it just did. She criticizes every motion of my tongue to the point where it becomes irritating, all the while she is pulling on my hair and smacking my head like a bongo drum. She lifts her right leg up a little and proceeds to fucking fart in my face. She literally rips a fart into my face and starts laughing about it. I am absolutely mortified, and finally, she pushes my head off and yells, "Are you going to fuck me or what?" I proceed to start going at it, where she refuses to sit still for more than several seconds at a time. Every time we engage in one position, she is flipping herself into some awkward pretzel to do something else. She starts complaining about my bad leg, military injury, and how I can't do several things she likes. She finally declares, "I'll just fuck you myself." I lay on my back as she hovers over me and then lets out an audible queef, on purpose, I swear to God, and it sprays me with vaginal fluid. I can't contain my distaste for what she's just done as she slides down, still queefing, on top of me. After about a minute of that, she declares, "Okay, I'm all set," and hops off me of. She starts to get dressed in a hurry and says adios quite sharply as she stomps down my stairs. I am laying there naked and confused, but proceed to follow her downstairs to lock the door after her. She is still putting her shoes on and says to me, "Nice meeting you and all, but don't ever text me again." At this point I just laugh and she slams my own door in my face. She texted me about a half hour later to tell me what a great guy I am and to take care. I never replied and deleted her number. I don't know if I would consider any of this a date, but this seems like the best place to post it. Something like 5 years ago, I was talking with a woman on OkCupid. In text, email, and on the phone, she sounded sharp, huge for me, funny and energetic. We set up a coffee date, and I pick a place in her neck of the woods as I had a nearby errand to run anyway. Show up to the date, and she tells me she doesn't really care for coffee. Operating under the assumption that I must have missed that cue during our conversations, I ask if there was anything nearby that she preferred, it being her region of town anyway. She said yes, that one of her favorite spots was just a 5-minute walk away. We walk over, making pretty great conversation. Turns out we have a lot in common, including an interest in theater, comedy, similar references/influences, and even a bit of flirting, a playful arm punch from her. We get to the destination, and it is a pet store. I love pets, so I figure this could be like some sort of window shopping date, full of good conversation and getting to know her. We walk in, and breaks off almost immediately, pulls out a list from her purse, and comes back with a cart of pet goods in a few minutes. I'm pretty clueless, and try to ask if she wanted to look around or something before checking out. She says that no, she got what she needed. She pays, and I help her carry the 50 pound of dog food back to her car. We get back to her car, put the stuff away, and as I close the trunk, I see that she's inside and has started the car. I walk over to her side of the car, and she says that she really has to go. I back up so she can pull out, and she drives off. With a little feeble wave, I am confused and go back to run my errands. First, however, I am going to get that coffee. Walk back to the coffee place, and while waiting for my drink, I look at the art on the walls and realize that at least 5 of the 10 or so pieces of art on the wall have her name on them. Turns out, she's really good. No clue what happened on the date, but oh well. Back to errands. Fast forward a couple of hours, and I get a text from her saying that we should meet up later that day. I reply that I am still in the area and was going to get something to eat. She's welcome to join me. She said yes, and we made another date. Show up at the restaurant, and again we hit it off. Turns out she paints, is a great photographer, and she's taking sculpting classes while she has her day job as a commercial photographer. She's really interested in my work, scientist/engineer, and the meal just rushes right by. After an hour or so, she sees some of her friends walking across the street and says that she'll be right back. She runs out of the restaurant. Her friends are all super excited to see her, and they just immediately start talking excitedly and walk off. I wait 10 minutes, but nothing. Send a text, nothing. Even more confused, I pay the bill and walk back to my car. That was enough for me, and I was going home. Driving home, and getting my stuff ready for work the next day, when I get another text. She wants to know if I'm free to join her and her friends for a comedy show. She says one of her friends can get us in for free, and that Nick Swardson was the headliner. I was super pumped as I love Swardson more than I was weirded out by our 2 dates. So I show up and meet her and her friends. I hit it off again with the girl. Turns out we know some common people, but all her friends are giving me the "did you just fart" look the entire night. So, I make an effort to try to get to know them more, but they aren't enthralled by my presence. I chalk it up to the fact that the girl really is like 9.5/10, and on my best days, I'm a lucky 7. The show is starting, so we're getting seated, and they put us in the front row table. I start to panic a bit, as I do not like being the guy comedians interact with. However, my panic turns to sudden crotch sweating as I see that there are 5 cameras in the room. It turns out that this show is being recorded. Even better, it turns out that Swardson was never on the bill, and it is a bunch of comedians I have never heard of. I'm ready to roll with it, as this girl is fun to talk to. Then her friend, the one who works at the club, comes up to us and tells us that we need to be sure to laugh a lot as our table will be visible by the cameras. The lights dim, the show starts, and the comedy doesn't. There were people talking, and the audience was there, but it was just failed joke after failed joke. I'll remember this till the day I die. At one point, one of the comedians states that everyone has a Jewish aunt. That's the joke. You know what I'm saying? No, I don't, but because of the cameras, I sure have to act like I do. Line after line, comedian after comedian. 3 hours later, my face is just aching from fake smiles. My hands are raw from fake clapping. My mood is in the floor as I realize that my date is living this. My exhaustion suddenly turns to excitement when the show closes, but then slowly turns to panic as she leans in and asks if I liked the show. I said that some of the comedians had a few good jokes, trying to be positive. She punched me in the arm again and told me that I was dead wrong. Dead wrong. That show was hilarious. Seeing her laugh at so many terrible jokes just ruined any attraction I had or her. I say that it is getting late, and I have work tomorrow, so I need to go. She asks if I'll walk her to her car since she parked away from her friends. I say yes, and we walk towards the exit. I walk her to her car, she hugs me, then gives me a slow, deep kiss, and says that she really wishes I understood her better. I was tired. I was exhausted. I wanted to know what the hell was going on. Out of all the thoughts running through my head at that moment, I don't think I said anything except, "Hey, how'd the dog food get from the trunk to the rear seat?" She said, and I'll never forget this, "It just does," and she drove off. So, it just does. And it just did. 2 weeks later, I get a phone call from her saying that she saw my profile on OkCupid and thought we should go get some coffee sometime. My friends thought I and this lady would be a great match. This happened. It was about 2009 or so. They showed her a picture of me and showed me a picture of here. She was quite attractive with big boobs and birthing hips, which is my fetish, so I was in. I am very tall, muscular, good job, etc., so she was excited. We started talking on the phone several times and texting. We agreed to meet for date. She's telling me the whole time how successful and rich she is. She is an executive for a local telecom/internet company. Just got done throwing a big party for 500 people in her backyard, etc. She was very charming, sweet, and nice on the phone. I agree to meet her during the week after work. I live 90 minutes from her home, so I have conditions. I will need to come to your house, shower, dress, and maybe do laundry because I have to work the next day. She agrees and everything is awesome. We agree to have a barbecue at-home date, where I barbecue steaks and shit, then drink wine, and have a wonderful time together. She thinks me grilling steaks and wine drinking is perfect, and is very excited. My only request is that we don't meet any family members of hers. I get off work and drive to her house, which she just had a party for 500 people. It's in a shitty part of town, and it's a duplex with a small backyard that would not accommodate 500, not even close. I give a deep sigh and step out of my truck. She comes outside with her big boobs and short shorts, waving, so I was thinking this could end well. She has 3 massive pit bulls and a border collie, which want to greet me as well, because they are at the gate barking and snarling at me. I don't skip a beat. I open the gate, and the dogs are on me like puppies. I love dogs, and these dogs love me back, no problem at this point. We greet each other with hugs, and she decides to show me how she plays with her dogs. She throws a tennis ball across her muddy backyard, and these K9s go rushing for it. The biggest pit bull gets the ball, returns it, and punches me right in balls, hard. I'm down. After I recover, I request to take a shower, get cleaned up and change clothes. No problem here. Bathroom was clean. I was quick. Upon entering her mansion, I was floored by the unclean smell of neglected litter boxes. After the shower, I request a beer. She says she's out. I suggest we go to the grocery store and liquor/beer/wine store to prepare for dinner. We travel to get steaks, salad, beer, etc. I buy some nice ribeye steaks, wine, beer. We get home and I start the fire for grilling. The dogs know what up, and then we can't get rid of them. She starts throwing the tennis ball, and the digs return, covering me with mud. While we are waiting for the fire to heat up, she wants to give me a tour of the house. She takes me into the basement, and the smell of cat piss and ammonia was overwhelming. At this point I just said fuck it, and decide to enjoy the ride. The cat box hadn't been cleaned in 3 to 4 months, and there was a workbench in the basement with duct tape, gloves, torture tools, etc. I opened a small basement window to help clear the cat smell. After getting freaked out by the basement, I figured the fire was ready and prepared the steaks, olive oil, seasoning, and then prepared an avocado/tomato salad. Start grilling the steaks, and notice she is not drinking wine or beer. Steaks done. Prepare the table. Border Collie eats my steak. I eat her steak. Her parents drop by. Even though I requested, I don't want to meet anyone. I start to drink heavily at this point. I am too intoxicated to drive 90 miles home at this point, as well. I say I have to do laundry for work the next day. She washes my clothes. She starts to drink wine. After me clothes are done washing, she says that her dryer is broken, and we need to go to her daughter's house to dry them. I start to drink more heavily. We arrive at her daughter's house. Her pit bulls greet me with huge paws to the nutsack. I'm down. Literally down, because this huge beast nailed my nads. After a few moments I recovered. Now I have to make small talk. Her granddaughter was like Kim Kardashian crossed with Lady Gaga. At this point I wanted them all exterminated. All I want at this point is my clothes dry for work in the morning. The clothes dry. We get back to her house, and she starts drinking wine like a madman. I drink very heavily as well, because I just want to go to sleep at this point. I have clean, dry clothes for tomorrow. I am happy. All of a sudden she starts flailing about/seizures and passes out on the floor. I am drunk and panicking. I look in her purse and find glucose tablets. Call 911. All of the people in her family show up before the ambulance arrives and commence to bitch at me because she is a diabetic and can't drink alcohol. EMS arrives and... So I'd been talking to this girl from Tinder. We'd made plans to meet on a number of occasions, and she'd always bailed/ignored texts on the day of the date. I give it one last go at actually getting her to go on a date. She was, from her pictures, a solid 8.5, where I'm charitably a 6, so I figured it was worth it. This time she agrees, and that Saturday, I find myself driving over to her house to pick her up to go for a pub lunch down by the river. On arrival at her house, she comes out looking amazing in a white summer dress, and we set off. Everything goes great. We talk easily, although I get the impression she's exaggerating her job status somewhat. I'd seen the house she was sharing, and it didn't match the kind of role she was claiming to have. But still, who cares, she's gorgeous. Lunch goes well, and we go for a walk along the river holding hands, come back to the pub for another drink, and she asks what I have planned for the rest of the day. When I tell her nothing, she asks if she can stay at my house tonight. I agree, for the reasons already outlined. We finish up and drive back to mine with her massaging my shoulders and lap all the way. While we're going, she informs me that just because she is staying at mine tonight, she isn't easy, and I agree wholeheartedly. Back at mine, we have a look around, make out a little, and then decide the evening is still young, and we should go into town. We walk in, and I notice that it's exceptionally hard to walk holding hands with her, as she's always pulling in the wrong direction or adjusting her grip. In town, we have a couple more drinks and a meal. By this time, she's probably had 5 large white wines over 6 hours, so is a little tipsy. This seems to lead to her becoming more touchy-feely and generally more horny. Again, at this point, I'm really not complaining. In the last pub we stop at before heading back to my house, where she assures me she is going to make my cock feel better than it ever has before. I notice she has her phone out while we wait at the bar, and she's reading an email she just received with the title, Living with People with BPD. Immediately things start to make sense, her hot and cold nature in the past, her exaggeration, and the spur-of-the-moment way things have worked out today. But I feel like I'm too far gone to wriggle out completely right now. Too drunk to drive her home, and too far from her home to pay for a taxi. We finish our drinks and head back to mine, her hand tugging mine in all sorts of directions on the 15-minute walk. Part of the journey involves walking down a well-lit pathway beside the railway station. As we walk down the path, she tugs my hand backwards. When a couple come the other way down the path, she virtually throws herself into the bush beside it. When we get to the other end, she is almost in tears because she doesn't like enclosed places, because she's lived in some nasty places. With a little reassurance that there are no more enclosed spaces on the way, we start walking again. But now on the 15-minute walk, which she already did in the opposite direction 2 hours ago, she asks every 30 seconds how much further we have to go. At first it's endearing, but it rapidly becomes irritating as every time she asks she stops dead and won't move until I've explained fully exactly how long it's going to take. That part of the ordeal ends when we get back to my house. In the kitchen, she drops her dress in a puddle on the floor and starts making out with me in just her panties before I can even lock the door. I lead her upstairs, and we make out for a while on my bed while she undresses me. At one point she rolls on top of me and tells me, "I want this to go easy peasy, catchy monkey." I agree, despite not having the faintest clue what that means. Then with her next breath, she tells me she's not just going to have wax with me, and if I don't like that I can leave. I don't like to point out we're in my house. I assure her if she doesn't want to have sex we won't, and at this point I know I will not have sex with we tonight, as doing so, with someone with clear mental issues after they've told you they don't want to, can only lead to horrendous sorts of trouble. We make out some more, with me having to assure her every couple of seconds that it's fine that we aren't going to have sex. I have to be up early in the morning, to run her home and to go to work, so we decide to go to sleep. I go into the toilet, and while I'm gone she calls me back into the bedroom, a note of panic in her voice. She points at the broken end of a stick deodorant on my side table and accusingly asks me what it is, clearly thinking it's drugs of some sort. It takes a couple of minutes to assure we that isn't the case, and we settle down for a decent night's sleep. Only kidding, no we don't. Then comes the terrible stuff. She dozes off for 15 minutes, and on waking up again starts making out with me, then pulls my thing out of my shorts and starts sucking on it before really amateurishly trying to tit-fuck me while giving me her best dirty talk, consisting of, "I want to make you come with my pussy big boy." And then she starts to straddle me, wiggling her panties down. As I said, I'd already decided I wouldn't be having sex with her, so I proceed to talk her out of it, which takes 10 minutes, all the while assuring her I'm not made about us not doing it. We go back to sleep again, but now whenever I move, even slightly, she pats my head and says, "SH," and I swear one time, "SH, mommy's here," meaning I lay completely stationary until she drops off. Then she flails around in her sleep like a rag doll. When not smacking me in the face with an arm, she's flinging a leg, an arm up the wall, while gasping and moaning. Eventually I manage to fall asleep, only to wake to find her face inches from mine, her eyes drowsy looking but awake. She proceeds to engage me in a conversation about the seriousness of our relationship, where he insists that I need to commit to her, and that even though I keep saying everything is fine, I'm not doing anything to make sure it is. She also tells me she adores me, and demands to know what I should tell her family about us. I figure the best thing to do is agree with all this, and eventually she lets up, but not before insisting that I need to see a doctor for my moods. And that's basically the way the night goes. I don't sleep for more than 10 minutes at a time, between being hot with flailing limbs, woken by her sitting bolt upright claiming, "I'm dying," because she needs a glass of water, pouring half of that glass of water down my back. Waking me up, calling me Danny, not my name, and telling me how sorry she is. I don't really feel able to get a proper night's rest. Hold on to your hats, people, because this is a doozy. One could say I walked into this, even that it wasn't really a date, because I texted him halfway through work and said, "I'm having a horrible day. Meet me for cocktails downtown after work." We met at my birthday party just a few days before, and I thought we had really hit it off, but I'd already had a specified date that night, and had just met him at the party and didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings. They were both nice guys. Anyways, I digress. He agreed to meet me downtown for cocktails at 5:30 p.m., but about an hour later asked if I could meet him across town where he worked. Heh, I should have just said no, but I really thought we had hit it off, and it was just one really out of the way bus ride. Normally I drove, but today I hadn't. I had just moved to a suburb, and the bus was pretty convenient, so I was taking it whenever possible. since I had intended on getting drinks downtown near the bus stop I didn't drive. Now I was taking the bus across town after my shitty day. But hey, I like the guy, right? Well, I get there. It's now 6:30 p.m., and he's nowhere near done with work. He's a barber, and he's in the middle off giving a friend a fucking 4-hour-long jerry curl. That's right, a stinky man perm. I'm hungry, and was expecting cocktails. I'm now wondering why he didn't just tell me it was bad timing, and telling me he couldn't do it. But I figured whatever, he really likes me. He probably had the lapse of judgment for the same reason I did in taking the bus all the way out here. Now he promises he'll drive me home, and have me home by 9:30 p.m. I'm sort of stuck there now, unless I want to take the bus all the way back downtown, hungry and sober on my Friday after my shitty day. So basically, I'm in this now and dependent on him for my ride home. So, I guess I'm sitting through this perm. Better put on my smiley face. He got beer and smoked me out. Despite that I told him I was hungry, he didn't seem to care at all that I was hungry, but did think buying a higher alcohol beer was totally a good idea. So I couldn't drink much of the beer before it started to give me a headache. You may be thinking, why didn't you just go and get food? Excellent question. There was a supermarket not too far away. I could have, I suppose. But I didn't. I waited. I waited thinking that after the perm was done he'd have the sense to take me to dinner as a sign of appreciation for coming clear across town after a shitty work day, and then sitting and waiting at his work, which I was unprepared for, while he finished a perm. So now I'm starving, a little buzzed, and high with a stomach ache, tired, and with a shitty work day behind me, and the perm is fucking finally almost done. But, just when I think things are about to get good, he says to me, "Oh, BTW, I have to help my friend move tonight. You don't mind, do you?" Say what? We're doing what after this? I mean, I'm all buzzed now. I don't want to bus it all the way back downtown, and then all the way an hour home. I'm in my fucking work clothes, and he's roped me into moving his fucking friend. Now, I'm legitimately annoyed, but I'm stuck here. Okay, where are we moving him to? Tent City. Oh great, we are moving someone to fucking Tent City. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Seattle area, Tent City is essentially a neighborhood of homeless people who were given a designated area to be homeless in. Are you fucking kidding me? But again, I am now stuck in this. So, we go to pick up his friend. Or so I thought. Next thing I know, he pulls in front of a house. Is this where your friend lives? No. This is my parents' house. Again. Say what? But, I'm a down girl. I'm down to meet the parents, even on a first date. Hell, this could be fun, if I wasn't all starving and high, that is. Am I going to meet anyone? Oh no. You won't meet anyone. He proceeds to get out of the car and start moving stuff from the back of his truck into the back of another truck. I didn't bother to ask why or what, but sure as shit a woman who was obviously his mother comes out. It took me a moment to realize she was out there as I was listening to music and fixing my makeup and just frankly stoned. Once I realized his mother was there, I figured the polite thing to do would be to get out of the car and let him introduce us. So I did. Only, he didn't introduce us. Instead, I realized he seemed very annoyed by her presence and was furiously slamming things around with an angry look on his face. He seemed to take no notice of me standing there at all. So I just stood there awkwardly with his mother, who sort of looked me up and down with an face. Understandably. After a few awkward minutes of listening to them bicker back and forth, I introduced myself. She politely shook my hand and said, "Why don't you just take those inside so they don't get rained on?" He says, "Leave me alone, MOM. He's 30 years old, BTW. Oh, get real. You're just being lazy." Then he shoots back, "Why do you always have to be such a fucking bitch?" He proceeds then to yell obscenities at his mother in a tirade for longer than I care to remember. It was so uncomfortable, I literally ran back into the car. I sat that stunned. I couldn't believe he would bitch out his mother like a fucking 13-year-old in front of a woman he is trying to impress on a first date. I contemplated my situation. I'm shackled to this person, doomed to help his now homeless friend move to Tent City stoned and starving after watching him scream down his mother. He's clearly nuts, and an idiot with absolutely no regard for my personal interest, comfort, or safety. I should have just gotten a cab at that point, but I was high, so I didn't. He got in the car, and I just pretended everything was okay. He proceeded to tell me all about how he hates his mother. Just what a woman wants to hear on a first date. All about your mother issues. Then we finally go to pick up the friend. On the way I told him I had to pee, but instead of stopping somewhere logical for me to go, he asks his friend to meet us in front of an Albertsons grocery store. I run in and find the restroom and go pee, and when I come back out, still in my work suit by the way, his friend looks me up and down ADN. You could just read the dismay on his face. Who I asked this stuck-up bitch? Great. Then my date does the absolutely unthinkable. He has a truck with a small back seat. I was going to offer to sit in the back because his friend was much larger than me. But before I could offer, he just flips the seat up and hollers at me to get in the back with a smile. With a smile. Like he doesn't even realize how fucking presumptuously rude and dumb that is. Really? This is how you impress a woman on a first date? Make them take the bus cross town, starve them, subject them to stinky perm, scream your mother down in front of them, rope them into helping your friend move to Tent City in her suit, and then you just expect me to get in the fucking back seat? What the mother F? But I'm stuck now, so I get in. I'm starting to think this guy is so out of touch he may really be dangerous. I'm a little scared. Not to mention it's already 8:45 p.m. He promised to have me home by 9:30 p.m., and we haven't even started moving his friend. Fortunately, his friend seemed so not wanting to deal with me, he just postponed until the next day, so we didn't have to move him. After his friend made us wait outside his soon-to-be-not-his apartment for about 15 minutes while he decided what he was going to do, he let us know my date could help him tomorrow. Sigh of fucking relief. Could you please take me home now? He begrudgingly agreed to take me home. To be honest, after seeing him scream down his mother in a fashion rivaling my worst teenage outbursts, I was scared. I was afraid of upsetting him and having him leave me on the side of the road. I was nowhere near a viable bus stop and in a bad neighborhood. I just wanted to go home and have no problems. I got him to take me home, but he refused to leave until I kissed him goodnight. I gave him a quick kiss goodnight and literally ran for the door. My best friend's girlfriend had introduced us. The next time I saw her, she told me, "How come you never returned any of worst date ever texts? He thought you guys really hit it off." When I told her what had gone down, she was pretty surprised, but not exactly shocked. Apparently when she explained it to worst date ever, he was completely confused. He had thought the date went amazing, which just goes to show how out of touch he was. Anyways, that was my worst date. Here's my horror story. I'm new to the state of Texas, and only 21. I'm on OkCupid looking for friends, or potential so. I'm just chatting anyone and everyone, and it's largely going nowhere. One night, I get a message out of the blue from a girl. We start talking, and we have a lot of similar interests. We both like real heavy metal. I'm still not sure what this statement means, but I wanted to impress a girl, and documentary film. So we talk for about an hour and asks, "Would you want to meet up?" Me again, looking for any other human connection, asks, "Sure, when?" She then asks if I will pick her up tonight. I should have no "please strange mail" on the internet. "Pick me up at my home address tonight" was a red flag. Still I say sure because ______. I wish I had a good reason to fill in that blank with. I head to her place about 30 minutes away. I pick her up and she lets me come in for a few minutes. Her place looks normal and she has cool posters of weird 80s metal. Seriously, who listens to Jet Boy? But we decide to go to a local dive bar. We get there, and it reminds me of that scene from Vanilla Sky where Tom Cruise becomes aware that everyone in the room is there for him. Everyone is looking at us, and I can tell right away from the bartender's demeanor that she's a regular. She offers to pay for everything and we sit and talk about metal and work. She's in between jobs, but her dad pays for things, and tacos. I'm not really feeling anything romantic, but it's a good time talking. She excuses herself to use the women's room. The bartender asks, "How long have you known Crystal, or was it with AK?" And I tell him we just met. His words exactly were God, another guy for her to use. Good luck. At this point I'm thinking, okay, bartender's a jerk because she's sweet and wants to buy drinks since I drove to her. Maybe he's some jilted ex. We leave and she says, "Hey, I've got to pick something up from a friend who lives in this area. Would you mind driving me there?" I'm 22, and this girl is now the person I know the most in the state of Texas, so my thought is, why not? We drive to a house that should be at the intersection of sketchy and cops don't patrol here. She goes up to the front door and meets an old Latina woman, and they exchange something. Don't ruin it for the Redditors that don't know where this is going. We drive back to her place with me thoroughly disturbed. Upon arriving, she asks if I want to watch a documentary, and I ask what she has. We settle on American Pimp, and she says she's going to make tacos. As the meat is cooking, she sets up a small table with a lighter, ashtray, needles, gauze, band-aids, and surgical tubing. Even though I know what's about to happen, I sit there anyway. She begins shooting heroin right there. She was sweet enough to offer me some. I decline. Then the crazy that is apparently just beneath the surface comes out. I learn the following. She lost her license after multiple DUIs. Her dad pays for everything because he feels responsible for getting her addicted. He is responsible because just like your parents might give you a little wine or beer, he shared his stash with a 13-year-old Crystal. Have I seen her dog? She had one and then passed out, and now she can't find it. This apparently happened over a week ago. Sometimes she talks to the dead when she is high. She's talking to grandmother right now, and she says she loves me very much. My grandmother is alive. She will suck me off if I stay the night and keep an eye on here. At this point, she starts to pass out. I turn her oven off and eat the tacos, better than you'd think, and show myself out. This probably isn't the worst story in the world, but it still infuriates me. Went out to a famous Hollywood bar and grill. There's your hint, with a girlfriend. I was 21, she was 19. Met two guys, one a troll, the other super hot, age 22. The latter was gorgeous, funny, gregarious, happened to be Hollywood royalty, or rather the progeny thereof. Blah blah blah, and of course preferred my friend. Spent the next hour or so chatting her up, running his lines, her giggling and tittering all over the place while I sullenly made small talk with the friend. You know that story. Somewhere during the evening, though, he decided to set his sights on me, and young as I was pretty suspicious, realizing he probably saw me as the easier mark. I mean, there was no way a guy like this was going to choose me, 5 feet 2 inches, 10 pounds overweight, relatively attractive but not overly so, over my friend, a tall willowy blonde who bore a striking resemblance to a then famous young model. So when he asked for my number at the end of the night, I hesitantly gave it to him, and assumed I'd never hear from him. Couldn't figure out his play. My friend and I both assumed he was either playing some sort of game to get closer to her, or wanted to fuck me and throw me away. He called the next day, and told me he wanted to take me out on a proper date. Told me how charming and lovely I was, and he wanted to prepare a meal for me, and show me a night on the town. I informed my friend of this, and pleasantly surprised, she encouraged me to go. I was skeptical. I'd never been on a proper date before. I was much more the hang out and drink type, and didn't believe this dude was actually interested in me. Still, due to the uniqueness of the situation, I agreed, and we made plans for me to come up to his place the following Friday night. I showed up to his place, a spacious condo in Beverly Hills, where he greeted me at the door with a rose and a kiss on the cheek. It kinda grossed me out. I did not trust this shit at all. Immediately felt like he was a huge fucking phony. I might be the only woman on earth who recoils at the sign of a gentleman, but that I did. Still, of course, I entered to find 2 place settings at his marble table. This lovely meal he made for me consisted of a salad made of iceberg, baby tomatoes, and Italian dressing. After we ate, me thinking, really? All the while, he suggested we go out for a cocktail. More affectation, more phoniness. What 22-year-old dude on the planet uses the term cocktail? Unless he's trying to seem suave and sophisticated to the rube, he intends to fuck at the end of the night. Again, I was grossed out, but agreed. We walked to some bar, no idea where he made a big show of talking to the doorman like a buddy. To show me he was a regular, and some sort of very big deal. We go in, he orders me a tequila sunrise, himself some sort of whiskey, and we maneuver through the crowd to find a space at the end of the bar. We stood there and chatted, which consisted of him bragging about his father, grandfather, and their money, until the drinks were drained, at which point he suggested we go back to his place. We were in the bar for about 10 minutes. So we leave. We get back to his place. I stand just inside the door with my coat on, unsure of what to do next, as he excuses himself to use the restroom. A few minutes later, I hear him calling me from a corner of the condo. Followed his voice to, of course, his bedroom, where he was lying spread-eagled in his red bikini panties. He gestured to his dick and instructed me to take off my coat and come enjoy. I said, no, I don't think so, to which he responded, really? I make you a nice dinner and take you out for a drink, and you don't think so? Well, your coat is already on, so have a nice night. I said, you're kidding, right? Not in the least. See you around. I turned on my heel and left. And that was it. My big date with the son of a wealthy Hollywood producer. Amazing. I have 3 rules for dating people I meet online, and 2 of them I learned from one really bad date. About 6 years ago, I met someone on hotornot.com, which should have been the first sign, as that site was already scraping the bottom of the barrel in 2008. She had some cutish pics, but they were a little too small to make out details. But we agreed to meet for pizza, as I was a recent Chicago transplant into the Bay Area and longed for good food. We agreed to have her pick me up from a train station in Oakland, yikes, and from there head to pizza, and maybe afterward go to a bar. As a new transplant, the only things I knew about Oakland, I really didn't want to know, so I crossed my fingers that the date was worth it. I arrive at the train station and see a beat-up old car pull up in front of me with plumes of smoke pouring out the windows. I lean down to look in the windows, and she says, "Get in." Her smoker's complexion makes her look like a 40-year-old, which is a mean feat for someone who was 25. I reluctantly get in her car, which smells like a rancid ashtray, as I do a quick cost-benefit analysis and realize that I'm in Oakland, and at least cars have some stopping power when it comes to bullets. She drives us to the restaurant, where I try to look at the bright side of things. Even if things go badly, at least I will have pizza in my belly. Boy, was I wrong. We make small talk before she says she used to be a teacher. Plus 5 points, I think to myself. She then says she taught Latin. Plus 10 points for knowing a dead language. She goes on to say that it was at a high school in New York. Plus 5 points for being traveled. This is where it goes wrong. She begins to tell me about a student she had a crush on, saying he was so mature looking for his age, which was 16 at the time. She goes on in detail about his great qualities, and then says she felt she needed to have him. In order to get her way, she invites him to a party that she'd be throwing for her students. Except that he's the only one that shows up, as he is the only one actually invited. She proceeds to ply him with alcohol to loosen him up, but he comes to his senses, smart lad, and bails on her. I would have been sorely disappointed if my date had told this story with remorse about a mistake she had made, but instead she told me this as if she was gloating. Like I would give her a high five and say, "Good try, maybe next time." I then proceed to tell her that I forgot about plans I had made in the morning and should really get going. She said that I had promised her a bar afterward, and she wanted to drink with me. I remembered that she was my ride and I was stuck who knows where in Oakland, not the nation's safest city. I contemplated throwing down $30 to cover the pizza and run out into the street to hail a cab, but I didn't know if I would be met with a hail of bullets upon leaving the place or not. My options were limited. Analyzing the situation, I realized that I needed to get her back on my side, but I have trouble even smiling for pictures on demand, so I know I'm in for some trial by fire acting. I do my best to tell her that I'm having a great time, and it was really stupid of me to forget, but I really needed to get that ride back to the train station. I said I'd happily pay for the meal, and she could pay for the next date. She could see through my lies and called me out saying, "You look like you're not having a good time with me." What did I do wrong? In an in-your-face manner. Tell me what I did wrong and why you don't like me, she demands. I lie through my teeth again and say I'm having a great time, but I really did need to go. She begrudgingly agrees, after much delay, to take me back to the train station. The whole drive back she's muttering about how she tried so hard, and she doesn't understand why I'd lie about agreeing to go to a bar afterward, and how she can't believe I didn't have a good time with her. Meanwhile, she keeps turning and staring at me, reminding me of that scene from Vanilla Sky, where Cameron Diaz tries a double suicide driving her and Tom Cruise off a bridge. My post is proof that I did eventually make it home, and added the following 2 lessons to my dating rules. 1. Always arrange your own transportation to and from date. 2. Plan for a short first date or plant the seed to have an excuse to end the night early, before you even meet. Someday I'll post about how I learned my first lesson. Always meet in a public place. This was back in the days of MySpace, all those years ago in 2005. I was a young teenage, sort of Bronco buck, sans the pink carnation, but I had the pickup truck. Like any red-blooded young American, British, Canadian, Korean, you get the picture. Male, I wanted girls, and lots of them, and I used any means necessary to find them. I went to parties, blind dates, supermarkets, apple picking, even friending random girls on MySpace. It didn't really matter as long as I could find the women. Lo and behold, MySpace actually paid off. A girl I friend told me I was cute and wanted to meet up sometime. Done. I'm in. I told her we should meet at Applebee's or something. What a classy guy I was. But she suggested Borders instead because we both love books. Okay, that's a neat idea. I do love books and nerdy girls are hot, so this was a no-brainer. We set up the time, place, location, etc., and I sit in anticipation for a whole week awaiting Saturday, e-stalking her pictures, IMing back on forth on AIM. Remember that? Calling each other on the phone. Remember that? Finally, that Saturday comes, and I show up at Borders at 11 a.m. sharp, as agreed upon. She was supposed to meet me by the discount books in the front. Not there. I think to myself, maybe she's late, better just wait for her, don't want to come on too strong. I stand there for 20 agonizing minutes, browsing the discount books, which by the way I ended up buying one of, until I hear someone say my name. I look up to see her, only 60 pounds heavier than her pictures on MySpace. Now let me preface this by saying I have no problem with someone being a little heavy. Had she made this clear by her pictures, whatever, I still would have went on the date with the same enthusiasm. She had a great personality on paper, and that goes a long way. But no, she flat out used tricks of voodoo magic to make herself out to look way different. Already off to a bad start, but I rebound and introduce myself. It goes well at first, a nice little hug, we start walking around, grab a coffee, and I'm really beginning to dig her. She seems like an absolute sweetheart, and she is very, very, very cute despite her misleading pictures. Damn, we're hitting it off. It went better than expected. Then her phone rang. Hey Mitchell. Huh? Oh, I'm out with that guy. Yeah, the MySpace one smiles at me, it's going good. Huh? Sure. You know where we are, right? Great, see you then. She hangs up her phone and says, my friend Mitchell is going to come meet us. Really? A male third wheel? Red flags are going up everywhere, but I decided to roll with the punches and went with it. We kept browsing around, and despite the fact this future surprise visit threw me a little, we picked up where we left off. Hardcore writing, lots of eye contact. F***ck, yeah. In walks Mitchell, who makes a beeline right to us. He's a scrawny little guy, sickly looking really, with long hair and a black Misfits t-shirt, along with JNCO jeans, out of style even then. I let the two of them say their hellos, hug, keep hugging. He looks at me while they hug. Holy shit, they're still hugging? Finally they break the hug. Hey Mitch, I say, extending my hand for a handshake. It's Mitchell, he replies, and leaves me hanging. Okay, hey Mitch, nice to meet you. Likewise. Okay, so now I assume Mitch, fuck him, he's getting called Mitch from here on out. We'll leave her and I alone after 15 minutes or so. Nope. Not in the least. In fact, he follows us around like he's her private goddamn security guard, watching me like a hawk the whole time. I tried to ignore him, and kept on flirting, stepping it up just to piss him off. Finally, I decide it's time to drop the nice guy act, and take over this situation like a boss. Hey Mitchell, wanna go get us a coffee? The Borders had its own Seattle's best inside. He glared at me, this request obviously pissed him off. Yeah, please Mitchie? She asked him. Okay, but only because you asked so cute. Off he went, not even asking what we wanted, just walked away. I used this opportunity to find out what the hell was going on. So what's the deal with him? I asked. Who, Mitchell? Yeah, Mitchell. Who the hell else would I have been talking about? Well, it's kinda complicated. Well, to be honest, I kinda wanna hear it, because he's really messing up this date. She goes on to explain her and Mitchell have been next door neighbors all of their lives, and that he's always had a crush on her. He's ruined a ton of her relationships, she stress eats because she always has to talk him out of his suicide attempts, and is ultimately ruining the life of this amazing girl. I switch from pity to rage. This stage 5 clinger is destroying her, and I will not tolerate it. Even if I have to go for broke on this one. Oh, you know what? I forgot I wanted to get a muffin too. Hang out here, I'll be right back. Off I go across the store to Mitch the bitch. No disrespect to the ladies. This guy can only be described as a bitch though, who is fixing our coffee up at the milk area. Hey Mitchell, you have a second? I suppose. He glares at me unblinking. Listen man, I don't know what's going on in your life, but you realize this isn't okay, right? Your lifelong friend is out on a date with me, and we were having a great time until you came along. I let it sink and gave him time to reply nothing. Okay, onward. The thing is, Mitchell, I really like her, she's a sweetheart, and I could see myself being with her. I know you're a big part of her life, and I respect that, man, but you are way too possessive of her. You shouldn't be here right now. I meant Borders. Here? What do you mean here? You want me gone? I'm gone. With that, Mitchell drops the coffees on the floor and runs full sprint out the front door of the Borders. Fast too. This kid coulda ran track. Great, and now the whole store is looking at me. Embarrassed, I walk back over to her, but the walk was short since she had made her way over to me when Mr. Emotion began screaming. What did you do to Mitchell? Relax, I told him that he was intruding on our date and we're having a great time. He got upset and ran off, that's all. With that, her phone rings. Can you guess who it was? Yep, you're right. It was motherfucking Mitchell. He's crying, saying he's going to climb the roof of the nearby Best Buy and jump off. He doesn't want to live if he can't have her. Seriously? Great. As annoying as this kid was, I didn't want him to kill himself, so I flipped my RAZR, remember those? And call 911 to tell them what was going on. The cops come, they check out the roof of Best Buy, no Mitchell. They call his phone, he answers, they identify themselves to him, he hangs up. Fucking great. This cycle goes on for about an hour until Mitchell shows back up, moving towards us across the Best Buy parking lot with hate in his eyes. I quickly point him out to one of the cops. I'm not losing my life over this psycho. The cop immediately sees how hostile his approach looks and moves to intercept him. As he does this, Mitchell falls to his knees and breaks down into tears. This throws the cop off, who proceeds to place his hand on his gun and orders Mitchell to stand up. He does as he's told, gets a pat down, more cops come, interviews start, the whole thing is a blur. Finally, my date is able to get close enough to Mitchell, and I'm thinking she'll tell him he's got to stop, to get his life together, etc. Nah, instead she sits in the back seat of the cop car, legs facing out towards the door, and Mitchell sits on her fucking lap like a baby. She rocks him back and forth as he cries into her shoulder. What the fuck? The cop who interviewed me and got my story shoots a look at me like, bro, run. And I do just that. Well, sorta. I didn't want to run away out of nowhere in front of a bunch of cops. I hastily beat feet to my truck, get in, and get the hell out. She called me a few days later, and I explained to her I was way too freaked out to deal with her and Mitchell's inappropriate and creepy friendship. She understood, and it's a shame really, because before Mitch the bitch, sorry again, this date was going great. Flash forward to last year, and she finds me on Facebook, adds me, and we begin to message back and forth. She's doing well, got her BA, was getting ready to go for her master's, etc. She has a fiancé who seems like a great guy and treats her well. But I had to ask, what the hell happened to Mitch? Turns out after that day Mitchell really went off the deep end, attempted suicide multiple times, and was almost successful overdosing on aspirin. His parents couldn't handle him anymore and sent him away to get help, and he did. He must have read a lot of our /fitness because he ended up getting jacked, apparently, and proceeded to become a bouncer for a few years in Atlanta until he got stabbed and left the job. He let his muscle tone fade away, gained weight, became super fat, and got lost to World of Warcraft until last year when he became a born-again Christian. Fun. I had recently moved to a new town and didn't know anyone there. I decided to meet up with this gorgeous brunette for a second date out on the town. There was a big music festival going on in all the bars around town. Let's call this girl Sarah. Being the ignorant gentleman, I offered to cover Sarah's ticket to the music festival and the first round of drinks. The fact that she generously showed off the cleavage of her fake breasts helped cloud my judgment as well. On top of this, Sarah tells me that her sister is town for the weekend and wants her to come along. Let's call the sister Mary. This should have been red flag number 1. We start off at bar number 1, and Sarah tells me she wants to meet up with a bunch of her friends. Okay, maybe this won't be so bad. I thinking that I'll be out on the town with a bunch of cute girls. Nope. A group full of guys. Red flag number 2, right? Nope, not for me. After a couple rounds, Sarah starts getting openly flirtatious with one of the guys at the table. This is when I realized what was really happening. Sarah was using me to pay for her night, be DD, and keep her sister occupied while she flirted with some other dude. Being a proud young man, I would not stand for such a blow to my pride. How dare she do this with the guise of going on a second date? I idly chat with Mary while coming up with a plan to get this bitch back. After a couple more rounds, we head off to the next bar to see a band play. Mary is decently cute and a pretty cool chick. She knew what was going on and apologized to me about it. Apparently this was a common thing for Sarah to do. No problem, I say. Yeah, no problem. My plan's already in action. I start flirting with Mary. First, small flirts here and there in front of Sarah to see how Sarah reacts. Sarah does not like this at all, since she's a controlling bitch and only wants me to do what she brought me out there to do. I keep flirting with Mary until, at one point, Sarah pulls Mary aside and tells her that she better not go home with me at all. Perfect. As the night goes on, I discover how annoying Sarah really is. She constantly whines to everyone about everything. She expects all of us to take care of her every need, and give everything to her. I suppose she considered her fake breasts an investment and expected dividends. By the end of the night, I'm actually glad that I wasn't the one having to put up with her crap anymore. After a long night of flirting with Mary, I decide to make my move. I suggest to Mary that we go back to Sarah's place and call it a night. Mind you, we're downtown, far away from anyone's car, and I was the only one sober enough to drive or even find the car. I knew this, and I knew that by leaving Sarah alone with her real date downtown, she'd have quite a long and expensive journey back home. Wooed by my charms and a fair amount of alcohol, Mary agrees to leave with me without even thinking about her sister. Goal number 1 accomplished. We finally reach Sarah's place, and I convince Mary to let me stay the night. Sexy time follows. I remember to lock the bedroom door. More sexy time follows. Hours later, Sarah finally makes it home alone, says goodnight to her sister through the door, and goes straight to bed. I can tell how pissed Sarah is just by the way she's walking. Goal number 2 accomplished. I wake up early as crap in the morning the next day. I sneak out of bed, get dressed, and sneak out into the living room. Sarah's purse is lying right there on the table. Sarah and Mary are both passed out in their beds. At this point, I feel like Sarah and I are equal now as far as time wasted. Sarah led me on. I slept with her sister. Even. But she still tricked me into paying for that festival ticket, drinks, knowing she was just using me. I search through Sarah's purse and reclaim a good portion of the money I'd spent on her. At that point, I head home and never talked to Sarah again. Mary kept in touch with me and thought it was pretty hilarious what I did. It's unfortunate she lives so far away. She wanted to do a picnic of sorts, but it was July, incredibly humid and a bit steamy/rainy that day. She insisted we did the picnic deal. Spent an hour getting this table nicely set up with food, dessert, candles, a nice tablecloth, cushions for us to sit on comfortably. Had never done this, but was trying hard to impress. Was actually quite proud of the end result. She arrives 15 minutes late. There was no connection hardly at all. She was not talkative, despite spending hours on the phone texting for a week leading up to date. She said she loved Latin/Caribbean food, so I got takeout from one of the best places local. A kind of assortment of things. She didn't touch any of it. She sat and looked at the river in the background, and I asked her a couple of times if she was okay. If she would like to move closer to the river? Was there anything I could do to make her more comfortable? And she would just smile and say no, and that it was all wonderful, again, while not touching a single thing except a bottled water she brought. I sat through this for almost an hour. Finally, I just flat out said, I guess I was expecting a bit more conversation, or at least some engagement in this. I'm sorry it seems this date was a bust. And she just awkwardly smiled and said, I'm sorry too. I can see you put a lot of effort into it. So because I had nothing to lose, I asked her what was wrong or what I did wrong. And she responds, nothing really. I just think this is all a bit overboard for a first date. It's kind of cringe, like you're desperate. I can't even lie. My feelings were pretty hurt as I put together the date based on her cues and questions I had subtly asked. Even went ahead with the gross atmosphere of 90-degree weather and steamy, post-storm humidity. I wanted to respond, but I just bit my tongue and said, well, if you're not going to eat, I sure am. And I went to town on the food while she sat there. There was a couple sitting on a swing near us, and I went, hey guys, you hungry? And as it turned out, they were on a date, but were broke, so were just enjoying each other's company. And I invited them over to enjoy the table full of food with me. She left a few minutes after they came over, having said nothing since I started eating. And after she left, I had the best time with these two strangers, eating and laughing and telling them what happened, and both of them telling me I deserved better. I'm still good friends with them some 10 years later now. Never heard from the girl again outside of a single text later that evening saying, I'm sorry, that was a bitcha thing for me to say to you. I guess expecting me to respond, which I never did. Just blocked her number and moved on. Another one of a friend's to add. It was a Bumble date. I was very young, dumb, and spent a lot of time outside. He suggested I show him my favorite hiking trail, and I agreed. Totally stupid, but at least it was a busy trail, and the main loop was more like a walking path than thick wilderness. There was some light rain, so we sat in the car together waiting for it to slow down before we started hiking. He took his meds in front of me, which is no big deal. What was weird was he kept offering me one of his Klonopin, and I said no like 3 times. When we were hiking, we talked about our lives. He was new in town. He had wealthy parents who owned a second home in my town and let him move here rent-free. He had met a bunch of random people on Bumble Friends and let them all move into his home without charging rent. He was making an artist collective. They didn't make much art. They mostly drank and smoked weed all day. I told him I was in nursing school, and he said that it would be very hard on him for me to be in school if we got into a relationship. So I was already feeling like he'd be way too clingy. After hiking, we went to Target. He spent $50 on different kinds of socks and a laundry basket. His sense of humor was making weird noises at other people shopping, which was embarrassing AF. I drove him back to his car at the trail, and he left his socks in my back seat. So I had to meet him again to quickly give them back. My phone died, and by the time I got home, I had 15 missed calls from him. I felt a bit creeped out by that. He had spammed me a bunch of texts asking if I was okay over and over. Mind you, it had only been an hour since we went on the date. We had only talked for a few days and gone on one date, so it was too much. I told him it was nice to meet him, but I didn't feel a connection. He didn't stop texting me. The next day he tried to call me multiple times and texted again asking if I was okay over and over. I ignored it. After a few days he sent texts saying he had a dream I died, and it was so real he was looking for my name in the news. I didn't reply. He sent me a text that said, "Fine. This is how supervillains are born." Wild. I blocked him. Bad dates. So many bad dates, including one where he sent me a series of texts afterward critiquing my behavior on the date and offering me advice on how to more easily appeal to men in the future. But the worst. Oy vey the worst. First date on Tinder. Invites me to try a local food truck because my Tinder profile mentioned I love street food. Food truck lives next to a local dive bar where we were set to meet. So clearly implied, order food from food truck and kick back and get to know each other in the dive bar. Sounds like a great first date to me. But no, that's not what happens. We order from the food truck, me in Spanish. I was raised bilingual in English and Spanish. He turns to me and mocks my accent like I'm some gringa over-exaggerating the pronunciation of foreign words. He says it's so cute when white girls try to roll their R's. I reply, I'm half Puerto Rican. Ooh, fiery, I like it. If you can't tell, already going downhill. We get our food, but do we take it inside? Nope, he wants to eat leaning against the side of the bar where there is no seating. Strange choice, but okay. He then proceeds to tell me about a conference he just went to. It was for people in recovery. Dude is a newly recovered drug addict and completely dry. We are now roughly 25 minutes into the date. He's insulted me twice and unloaded deeply personal information on me. He wants to continue the date a bit longer. His first choice is bowling. I hate bowling like hate. I might be persuaded in a large group of people with copious amounts of beer, but this is not an enjoyable first date activity for me. Plus I'm wearing cute shoes and don't want to have to buy weird bowling alley socks. His second suggestion involves driving out to a state park about 10 minutes away built over a former landfill and partially restored in wetlands, but whose main attraction is all the found art created by local artists. I figure, why not? At least it will give us something to talk about. He gets upset when I want to drive myself instead of gowing in my own car. I meet him there, but it took me a few minutes to park. In that time he's changed completely, so completely I didn't recognize him, and he had to flag me down. He went from normal jeans and button-down with brown shoes to white trainers, white sweatpants, white hoodie, white stocking cap, goggles, and a backpack. We start walking into the park. I brought a blanket. I'm okay. He says let's find a place to sit. That's why I brought the blanket. I'd prefer to walk. This is not the type of park where you want to sit on the ground even with a blanket. We keep walking. Are you okay to walk in those shoes? They don't look like the best choice. Well, I guess you're a big girl, so you know best. I keep walking. He says, I'm cold, let's sit under the blanket. I prefer to walk and look at the art. I'm cold and I want to sit under the blanket and look at the view or leave. I don't respond. I just turn around and start walking back to the car. Hey, I know where we can go. And he starts listing other parks in other towns. I just keep walking back to my car. You're being mean. I'm working really hard here to create a nice date for us and you're being difficult. Why are you doing this? I put in so much effort to be romantic, and you're ruining everything. I just walked to my car, got in, locked the doors, and drove away. My friends swear I avoided being a true crime story about a dismembered body. A friend of mine's story to add below. I went on a casual date with a guy. Ended up going to his place, and he had expressed his eagerness to take things further. I was lonely, so I was like, okay, sure. But TBH, the conversation was very dry, and he barely talked the whole time. I worked my butt off just to carry the conversation, and it was exhausting. But I kept at it. So while trying to do the deed, he seemed clueless about what to do, and his body language was really off. I kept checking in with him consent-wise, like, is this okay? Are you sure? How are you feeling? Etc. And he reassured me each time, but he was just stiff as a board, not really doing anything. It was very off-putting, like he wasn't attracted to me at all despite what he kept telling me. This man was 40, and not a bad-looking guy at all. So after we attempt that for a while with no success, we start chatting again, and he mentions before I went out with him he thought I looked familiar. He's about 13 years older. So we talked about our pasts, trying to figure out where he may have seen me before. I'm quite recognizable due to unique appearance, so I am used to strangers saying things like this. Turns out, when I was in junior high/early high school, he lived a block away from me. He started telling me about how he always saw me and watched me back then, and thought I was so beautiful, and how lucky he was to be there with me. I started to get the serious ick because I was aged 12 to 17 when this would have happened, and he would have been in his mid-late 20s. I left pretty much right after that, and never saw him again. For non-scary, some of the worst dates I've been on, I have had several like this, is where the guy makes absolutely no effort to get to know me or express interest in me, or even impress me at all. Fellas, don't talk about yourself the whole time, and forget to ask your date at the very least one question about themselves. Don't interrupt her when she's telling a story, and then completely change the subject to something totally different about you after she's done speaking. Do not use her as a therapist and dump all of your problems/traumas/exes on the first date. Try to at least put some effort in the conversation and get to know your date, especially if they are the one that asked you out. It really is baffling when they don't show interest in you and or act like they'd rather be anywhere else. It's okay to not be interested in or attracted to somebody, but regardless, this type of behavior is really rude on dates.